You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello, and welcome back to another week of HCAM's Hangout Hour. I'm Jim Cousins, station manager here, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching. We have another week full of exciting content for you, starting off with some Girl Scouts talking about the Gold Awards. Co-hosting with me will be Matt Clark. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here as always.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And we have Ellora Hoyt and Holly Burns from Girl Scout Troop 72975. That's almost like a zip code there. Hey, Ellora and Holly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, our pleasure. So you're both doing Gold Awards, which I've talked to some Girl Scouts recently, and that's like the highest award you get, right? After that, you're all done. So, all right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your troop, but let's first kind of get into what your Gold Award projects actually are, what you chose to do. Okay. And let's start with Holly, because I know a little bit about that one. Okay, Holly, what do you got?
So my Gold Award is focused on the education of anaphylaxis, specifically in the athletics at the Hopkinton High School. I want to bring more education to not only student athletes, but also the spectators that attend the athletic events through our high school. And a big goal of mine would be to bring in more tools to help educate my community and bring in tools that could help save a life.
Now, how did you come up with that concept? Where did you get that idea?
So with family and friends of mine, I've always been surrounded by people with anaphylaxis, and the turning point for me in Girl Scouts and choosing different projects for me was when I heard about Abby Benford's story and how she had an anaphylactic reaction, and she was a very well-known student athlete at our school, and I would never want an anaphylactic reaction to be a reason that we lose another important person in our school.
Right. That's really excellent. That's a great idea. I'm going to talk about that, and let's hear from Ellora what you chose to do.
So for my Gold Award, I worked with St. John's Church in Hopkinton, and I worked with the CCD Religious Ed program there. I'm creating prayer cloths for their CCD program that the teachers can use. It's going to be for all ages, so from like the beginning of classes till confirmation. The teachers can use them, and it's just going to be cloths that they can use during class to make it feel more of a reverent environment and more religious and holy.
Do you happen to have one?
I don't happen to have one.
All right, so describe it for us. What do one of the cloths look like?
So most of them are just going to be white, like almost like tablecloth sized for the front desks where the teachers teach, but they're going to have kind of small embroideries on the side as well as crosses on the front. And I'm doing crosses of different colors for like the different parts of the church calendar year.
Oh, so talk about that again, that last part.
So I'm just having different crosses on the front of each cloth for the teachers at certain times of the year, like during Christmas or Easter. They can switch out the cloths whenever they want for the season.
Oh, that's really cool. Where did you get the different crosses from? Like the different patterns?
So I'm just sewing and cutting them myself. I've been sewing for over 10 years, so I just have a lot of experience with it, and I just picked out a bunch of different fabrics, and I'm just kind of cutting them and sewing them myself.
Okay. Matt, you got a question?
I do, but a separate question. How many of those do you have to make then for this project then? If that sounds like a lot.
I'm making about 15 right now. That's the plan, but I may be making more.
Wow.
You know, that was actually going to be my question too, because it does sound like a lot. So where did this concept come from?
I have been kind of brought up in a pretty religious family, and I've taken the CCD courses from, I think it starts in the kindergarten age to confirmation, and I was confirmed last year. So I've like been in the program for a while, and I've had lots of friends in the program, and I know some people who have like left the program for they just didn't feel like it was like doing them any good, or people who have just come with feedback that it could be, different in these ways, and that might help people be more connected when they take the classes. So I wanted to kind of do what I could to try and make people feel more connected and make it feel more like a holy environment where they could really connect to God.
That's a nice idea. So now, Holly, who did you work with? Like you have this idea. Did you have to connect with somebody in the school system and work with them about how what information you're going to present, and how did that go?
So I've been working with multiple different members of the school. I've been working with the athletic trainer, Amanda. I have talked to the nurse at the school. And I've talked to the head nurse of all the schools, Kathy Bain. And my project kind of has been working with all of them throughout the entire process to bring relevant information and education to the community. And anything I put out there, I've talked to them about it and make sure that it's accurate and worth putting out into my community to help.
And did this information that you found mostly come from looking at internet websites about anaphylaxis, or did you contact any companies?
So I've contacted a few companies throughout my project, but a lot of my information has come from EpiPen.com. It's a very well-known, respected website with answers to a lot of questions that a lot of people have about anaphylaxis. I've used that, and I've used a couple other websites from different universities that put out information about anaphylaxis. Yeah.
And I learned something interesting while you were talking about your project when you were creating your video, and that is exactly, tell us what's inside of an EpiPen.
So an EpiPen is filled with epinephrine, and epinephrine is basically adrenaline that helps reduce swelling and relieve hives during an anaphylactic reaction.
That's interesting. I thought it was a medicine, and it's actually, just something that your body makes itself.
So this is a question for both of you. What's the process like in getting this, because this is the final project for your Girl Scouts, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the process like in deciding what you want to do and then getting that approved? What's that process like?
Yeah, I'll answer that question. So in Girl Scouts, you have a lot of freedom in what your project is going to be based on. But when getting your project approved, there is hours of paperwork and conference calls that you have to go through to make sure that your project is worth spending 80 hours on. There's a minimum of 80 hours of work that has to be put into a gold award. And so they ask you questions and have you fill out paperwork just to make sure that everything is worth your time and effort and it's going to actually make an impact on your community, but also ripple to other communities.
No kidding. Ripple into other communities is actually part of your concept. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe are there 6 girls in your troop?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been together?
We've been together since kindergarten, and we've had girls come and go in our troop, but we've had 6 girls continue from kindergarten to our rising senior year.
Are both of you from kindergarten? Do you think that's amazing?
I do.
Yeah, I do.
I think
it's really amazing. I've known her for like most of my life, and so have I known all the other girls. It's just kind of a really cool bond to share.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellora. Go ahead, Holly.
We treat each other like sisters. That's how long we've been together.
And you know what? I'm glad that you recognize that, because I really think that is just astounding. I just can't even imagine, the friendships and the bonds that's going to last, with all of you for the rest of your lives. That's awesome. Now, after this, are you rising seniors, both of you? Okay. And what happens when this senior year concludes as far as Girl Scouting?
So there's many different ways you can go about continuing with Girl Scouts. You can volunteer for different Girl Scout events after you've graduated Girl Scouts, or you can become a lifelong Girl Scout member, which you're inducted into a different section of Girl Scouts for, which you can then become a troop leader or have different events hosted wherever if you have a business of your own. Yeah.
And if you were talking to a young girl in the community and they were saying, oh, I've heard about Girl Scouts, but I don't know, why would I do that? What would you say to that person?
Well, I'd say one of the main reasons would just be for the friendships and the really amazing bonds that you have that you don't get from school or from sports. It's a completely different environment, Girl Scouts is. And it's really really nice to kind of share that with the girls that I've grown up with. And if you join even later years, like in high school, if you were to join, or middle school, you have that bond then as well.
Not only that, but Girl Scouts and sticking with Girl Scouts is definitely recognized as something that is high honored in most communities, and with leadership positions in Girl Scouts, it's definitely recognized by businesses, and if you put that you were a lifelong Girl Scout on your resume, it's recognized as being very important.
Sure, I agree with that. I mean, it shows a lot of dedication, and it's also so strongly community focused. And you're even saying it yourself as when you were coming up with and designing your goal projects, that it has to impact your community and even go beyond. So I'm curious how each of you think your project may ripple beyond the Hopkinton community.
Well, for my project, I've had discussions with my Gold Award counselor about that exact idea of like can I make it affect other parishes and other communities. And we've actually decided that I'm gonna speak with a couple other churches from other towns over. So I'm speaking with a couple churches in Westboro and over, and just about my project and talking to them about the importance of keeping the religious ed classes, especially where a lot of the younger kids are, keeping those like up to date and relevant to kids for today, and making sure that they're feeling the impact of the classes and not just kind of sitting there.
That's really cool. And I think that is really important. This world is changing, and the pace of technology and change is only getting faster. And it's very important for those who are currently running things to hear from those who will be running things in the future, like what works for them. One quick way is if you watch some old movies, the pacing of the movies are so slow compared to the pacing of the movies now. It's amazing. Watch the original Batman movie, it's like, oh my gosh. So, but anyways, I digress. So Holly, tell me about what your thinking is concerning your project impacting outside of your community.
So I'm hoping my project being publicized mainly on social media, but also on different web pages, I'm hoping other schools will see that and put my hope is to have them put more education into their athletic departments in their school systems. So maybe if I bring it to schools around us in surrounding towns like Westboro or Holliston, that they'll be inspired and want to create some sort of education of their own.
Yeah, and I think that you have an interesting avenue because you're making a video to share your information. And how easy is it to share videos beyond the community nowadays?
Very easy.
Yeah. Matt, you had something?
Yeah, I did. another question for both of you. You both explained why these projects are very important to each of you. Was there anything that you would wanted to do for your projects and you decided against it for whatever reason, or it wasn't feasible? Anything like that?
For my project, I was looking into building something at the church, just again for the youth. I was building possibly like a gaga ball pit or something fun for the youth, but that idea really didn't end up going through just because it was hard to get like construction there for like property lines and things. Um, but I talked to like the advisors and Mrs. Lysick at the church, the religious ed director, as well as Father Cannon, and we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe enhancing the classes and not like enhancing kind of like the outdoor time that for summer camp and things would maybe help more with the program.
As far
That makes sense.
as far
All right. So Holly, what was your answer to that question?
So for my project, I was hoping to get an annual donation towards the athletic department of EpiPen, so the athletic trainer can have them on supply in case of an emergency. I'm still working at that, but as of right now, it's been kind of hard to get in contact with companies willing to do that or work with me on that project. But I'm still.
Shh. Sorry, that's my.
It's okay. I'm still trying to get that EpiPen donation.
Excuse me, it's my dog is kind of rambunctious. So if you are unable to get that, what is the current status? Like, what would happen? Because you talk about athletic events. How would that work if people get this information from the video? Is there anything in the school systems?
Yes, so currently the nurse gets annual donations of EpiPens towards the school. I'm hoping that I'll educate the community and the athletic department and they'll talk, and one of those EpiPens will be able to be used by the athletic department after hours at sports events. But if that doesn't work, then just educating people on the closest EpiPens or how to use one if somebody else has one with them would be my route.
Do you think it's scary to use an EpiPen, or is it not?
So I'm first aid and CPR certified, so I am not afraid of using an EpiPen, especially with having a brother and my mom being having anaphylactic reactions. I'm not scared, but I definitely think that somebody that's new to an EpiPen could be nervous about using one. And to that, I would say I highly recommend taking a first aid and CPR certification course. Those courses train you in how to administer an EpiPen, and it will definitely relieve your nerves on using.
Ellora, are you CPR certified and trained?
Not right now. I need to get.
So that's good. That's good. So let me ask you, do you think that the concept of using an EpiPen would be intimidating, or do you think it would not?
I think for me, it's not just because I was CPR and first aid certified, but I did think for other people, especially the fact that, you know, it's a needle and.
Okay. And I will say, I'm not saying this is from personal experience, but I would not play around with an old EpiPen just to see how it works, because it might end badly. And that's all I'm going to say about it. So, Ellora, you mentioned that you're kind of designing different crosses for different cloths that could be used at different times of the year. Is there anything else that you're doing about the cloths, like for seasonal? Are you picking certain colors or any other type of thing?
I mean, the crosses are going to be different colors on the cloths, but all the cloths for now are going to be white, and most of them are going to be just with regular gold crosses. And it's just for like the specific lessons that have to do with like Christmas or Easter, like major holidays when they're talking about the specific calendar of the church.
Okay. I see. Okay. Have you started them yet?
I started one, and I'm just kind of testing it out for now because I want to make sure I get the sizing right and how it looks before I like make the same pattern for all of them and realize they don't fit or something like that.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just have to mention that my mom watches my show too, and she was asking a question, and the answer is no. Percy did not have a question. Percy just saw somebody outside the door and got excited. Now, Ellora, have you sewn before?
Yeah, I've actually taken sewing classes since I was about like 7 or so.
Okay.
I stopped a few years ago, but I've taken them for 6 or 7 years.
Wow. No kidding. You must be really good.
Yeah. I wouldn't say amazing, but I definitely like know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's briefly, actually, no, actually not briefly recap, but let's talk about your Girl Scouting experience. For you individually, what's been the best thing you've ever done? Could be the most enjoyable, it could be the most giving, it could be the funny, whatever like you think about.
First,
Uh, I mean, probably my best experience. I think we're both thinking of the same one. Um, we were all camping at a summer camp. Like we would do, I think we did that for a couple years in a row. And
encampment.
yeah, encampment for just I think it was maybe a week or a weekend. In a giant like platform tent, and we were all I think it was 8 or 7 or 8 of us, kind of all squished in this one tent on cots, and we just had so much fun. Kind of like in the middle of the night, just kind of talking and also being afraid of the bugs. We kind of rated together for that. Yeah, throwing a lot of stuff around. It was just that's like one of my fondest memories I look back on when I think about Girl Scouts is how much fun it was, and we still joke about it to this day.
Good, good. Holly, how about you?
So I think, well, I definitely have a lot of memories from Girl Scouts, and my fondest one is definitely gonna be when we were doing a nature course with another Girl Scout troop, and I believe it was their gold award to educate other Girl Scouts on the importance of the wilderness and survival in the wilderness. And we were there, and afterwards, we were all hanging out in the woods together, and we decided that we were gonna talk about this new movie Dolphin Tale that came out, and the dolphin that had to have its tail removed, and that it was in Florida, and that it's not made up. Um, we all decided that for our senior year, we wanted to go see this dolphin winter together. And since then, we've been talking about it, and it's something that we always bring up when we're together. And it's not necessarily the actual going to see the dolphin, but the fact that we were all together back then, and we have grown ups together since then and still remember those memories.
Interesting. You both. It's like relationship they're talking about. Shared experience and just living life together. As my father would say, as you go on down the road of life, right? Now, do you have to complete a silver award in order to go for a gold award?
You don't have to complete your silver award, but I think all the girls did.
We all completed our silver award. I'm not sure if you have to have it completed.
Okay. What did you both do?
I made a ramp for therapeutic riders. So I horseback ride, and I worked at a lot of barns over the last few years. And one of the instructors at the barns taught therapeutic riding lessons, and she was talking about how it's really hard for a lot of the kids who have more severe special needs to get up on the horse without like a large kind of mounting block with a ramp for a wheelchair. So I ended up building out of like wood a ramp and like giant mounting block for the therapeutic riding lessons.
I remember that. I don't know where I saw pictures of that. That was really cool.
I put it in the newsletter.
Yeah. All right, Holly, what did you do?
So for my silver award, I worked with another Girl Scout troop member, Kate Berry, and we created a first aid, CPR, and babysitting certification course for Hopkinton to sign up. That's through Hopkinton Parks and Recs. It took over 60 hours to create the course and to find a trainer that was willing to put effort and time into helping serve our community and want to certify as many people as we can. But it was also focused around the Benford Foundation, and we worked with them to help create awareness about anaphylaxis through that certification course as well.
One thing that I think is very cool about these projects, they are not completed and they're done. And you just kind of put it on your resume. Like, you have created things that are going to continue helping people in your community even after you've completed them. That must feel really cool.
It's really rewarding. A big part of Girl Scout projects, whether it's bronze, silver, or gold, is that it has to be sustainable. And we definitely spent lots of hours making sure all of our projects were sustainable.
Wow, that's really great. There's all six of you, are you all rising seniors? So I don't know if this is kind of a tough question, but what's going to happen to Troop 72975 when you all graduate?
We haven't really thought that far ahead, but I think that we'll stay in touch. Definitely. We have different group chats on different social media platforms that we keep in touch with each other. And I'm sure that if we come home at some point for something with college, that we'll meet up at some point. We're not going to just say goodbye and never speak to each other again. We grew up together. I don't think there's really a chance of us just saying bye and not wanting to see each other again.
And who was your Scoutmaster?
My mom. My mom is our Girl Scout leader. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We need to get her on the show, by the way, too, to talk about whole experiences. Do you think that, well, I don't know, we should probably ask her. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that there'll be more recruitment and maybe another, or the Girl Scouts typically work like there's a Scoutmaster and a group of girls that grow together and go through the experience, and then there would be another Scoutmaster with another group of girls? How does that work?
So each different troop has a different troop leader. They might have a co-leader as well. And you stay with your same troop from Daisies all the way through Ambassador and Senior Girl Scouts. I'm not sure my mom would have another troop just because she wanted to do this for us, and it'll definitely be sad when we're all grown up and done with Girl Scouts for the most part, but other troops are still going in Hopkinton, and there's lots of little Daisy Girl Scouts running around our town, and they have their troop leaders, and I'm sure they're doing great things for their community as well.
Yeah.
That's what I think will happen.
Yeah. And actually, that when you think about it, that's a huge commitment. You know, that's a lot of years that you have all been together going through and sharing these experiences. Well, you both are walking testimonials for the value and the importance of Girl Scouting. And, you know, the stuff that I have heard and seen, you're all just tremendous people. You know, you're very concerned about others, and not only concerned about others, but actually helping others. And I think it's amazing what you do. And thank you for all that you've done for our community.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I hope to see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you. All right. And that wraps up this half hour. I actually don't even know what the next half hour is. So Mike can pop on, or if Matt knows what it is, you can introduce it and take it away.
Yeah, real quick, it's going to be you and John Ritson talking to Jay McCloskey, and on her first show before she actually became a co-host last week. So we're going to go and take that.
And John, welcome and thank you for co-hosting this episode with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hi again, folks.
Hi, John.
Hi, Jane.
I demand a raise.
We'll put another zero on the end of that.
Another zero on the end of the zero.
There you go.
All right. I usually don't come out of the gate with this, but Jane, I do have an issue.
Uh-oh.
I cannot agree with the tag on your video that says just Jane.
Oh.
You are not just Jane.
Thank you. That's an old joke from college. When I was in school, in my dorm, we had so many Janes. We each got a nickname and I guess I'm lucky I only got that one for a nickname.
That's awesome. That's really funny. I love stories like that.
Well, I happen to know someone else that's named Jane, and I think that's a fine name.
Thank you. I agree.
All right. Well, the first thing we are going to do, oh, good. You know those pictures you sent me, Jane?
Yeah.
I have them here. So at the appropriate time, we'll share them.
Okay.
Okay. But first, we are going to be talking in this half hour about a Master Gardener program that our Jane McCloskey went through. And before we get into talking about the details, I'm curious in your gardening history.
Well, it's kind of limited, actually. We've done a few things around the house here. We did a few things around the house in Holliston, but nothing really big. And my gardening history, really, my grandmother was a gardener, and I had an uncle who had a little tiny plot of land in the backyard up at his house in Peabody, and he grew vegetables and fruit and plants like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we would go visit and we'd leave with bags of rhubarb and all sorts of zucchinis and tomatoes. So he was amazing. But no, we've just started around here really because we had a garden out in front that just kind of went to pot, so to speak. And we decided to try to do something with that. And we have a problem like most people do in Hopkinton and in a lot of places. We have a lot of rocks in underneath, and we have a lot of deer. So we had two things to tackle there: get rid of some of the rocks and put in deer-resistant plants. We have deer-resistant plants everywhere. Mm-hmm. So thank God there's a good selection of those.
Jane, right. you have to share the story of our Holliston garden.
Oh, no, that's sad. We tried a vegetable garden in Holliston, and it was wonderful. We laid it out. We did all the right stuff with the soil and the compost and did everything, made little nice paths along the way. And I think one time I went out with a basket to get some of the beans and everything. I came back with one cherry tomato and probably 2 beans, and that was our crop. So we said, forget it. We're not doing anymore.
Oh, no. That is a sad story.
We gave up on that garden.
But that was a long time ago, and now you're in a very different place.
That's for sure.
Maybe I can interject my sad garden story.
Oh, gosh.
Years ago, we built raised beds on the side of the house. I planted a dozen tomato plants. Then we went on vacation. I came back. There were so many tomatoes everywhere. Half of them were rotten. We couldn't get them picked fast enough to get them out. That was the end of the garden.
Yep. Everybody has those stories for sure. We have better luck with tomato plants on the deck in the pots. We did pretty well last year with those, so we might stick to that, I think, for this year too. It's easy.
Now, how do they grow up, or I've heard that they can grow down too?
Yeah, you can do both ways. I mean, we have pots and we have the stakes that we put in to hold them as they grow. So, we don't grow the big ones really. We do mostly the smaller ones, the Roma ones and the cherry tomatoes. So.
I see. Yeah. Now, are you the lone gardener, or is John a help?
No, John's a big help. He really is. And he didn't even pay me to say that.
So
he's
John.
Great. He and John did the digging. He and Andy did the digging of the rocks.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful.
So I will say that I'm a great help at my house too. When we bought this house, the guy who lived here before had all kind of plants. And I said, listen, I will do some work, but I am not going to tend plants, it's always frustrating for me to pick weeds because they all look like weeds to me.
Yeah.
And then everybody gets mad at me because I'm pulling out plants, but they look like weeds to me.
Oh, yeah.
So, John, are you an enthusiastic helper or are you backing up what Jane likes to do?
I consider myself technical support sometimes, but as Jane said, I get out there and I, especially for this big garden project we did this year, I was in charge of pulling out all the old plants, tilling the soil, pulling out all the rocks, getting new topsoil in on top of it, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a raised bed that we put in a couple of years ago that it's sort of our experimental garden. I try sort of different things every year in there to see what grows, and inevitably nothing grows and they wind up on, the tomatoes wind up on the back porch. So this year I'm going really old school and trying, I think it's known as the Three Sisters, which is the old Native American thing of a mound with corn, squash, and beans. And the idea is the corn grows up and the beans climb up the corn stalk, and then the squash covers the ground and keeps the weeds out. And there's something with nitrogen fixing and all that supposedly goes on. So I'm anticipating yet another year of failure with that one too, but it'll be fun to try it and see how it comes out.
All right,
So that makes a big
really...
pile of compost for you.
All right, that sounds really good. And now let us turn to the Master Gardener. And can you tell us about the program that you found and a little bit about it?
Yeah. A friend of mine that used to work at the same company that John and I did for years, she retired, and I happened to run into her, and she mentioned that she was taking this Master Gardener program, which I had never heard about. And she said, "Oh, you should try it next year." So I looked into it and I said, "Yeah, that sounds kind of interesting." And it was held at Elm Bank in Wellesley, where the Mass Horticultural Society is located. And it was a very humbling experience to go back to school, shall we say. And it was quite challenging, and I'm trying not to laugh because we had a great group of people in the course. That was about 30 to 40 people in the class. And it was only one day a week, every Thursday in spring. They had a spring session and a fall session. And then the summer months, you were supposed to do all of your gardening, volunteer gardening, and get your hours in for that you needed for graduation and such. But each class was on a particular topic of interest to any gardener, whether you were a vegetable gardener or plants or shrubs or trees. So they covered all of those areas in the classes, and they were pretty intense. And we had, but they were great. I really learned so much. And I think the hard part for me was getting back into a classroom setting and having to take notes. Again, I lost that skill, but boy, I quickly got it back.
I just remembered you came home after probably the first session and you were almost in tears. You said, "They gave us homework and there's going to be a midterm." Oh yeah. We had homework every week, and we had a midterm and a final exam, and you basically had to pass in order to graduate. So it covered everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we get into some of the details of some of the things that you learned, do you want to talk a little bit about those pictures that you sent me of that
do you have
celebrity sighting?
Celebrity sighting. Do you have them ready to go? Okay. Oh, yeah, we had Roger Swain. I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember his show, The Victory Garden, on PBS. And he was our instructor for vegetables. And that's basically the setup there. Every instructor that we had brought something that they work in, whether it was dirt, mulch, compost. He brought all sorts of vegetables in various stages of growth and seeds. And he was a hoot in the class, that's for sure. But it was kind of fun having him as a teacher.
So he clearly he was on Victory Garden, and he brought in vegetables in different states of growth.
Yep.
Did he talk about what his garden looks like now and what he's doing?
He works in so many places, and he's up in New Hampshire a lot and such. So he's kind of he's very active. He's all over the place, and I think he'll go anywhere to talk about vegetables and to grow vegetables and help people. So.
Okay. So that was cool. That was a celebrity sighting of the day. Now, the name of the program that you took is the Massachusetts Master Gardener Association program?
Yep, MMGA. Yep.
MMGA. Tell us a little bit about what its mission is.
It's basically 2 points: to educate people who are interested in learning more about horticulture. And it's also, its goal is to promote outreach programs to educate others in the community. It's a big community-based organization. They want to get out there to schools and help kids. There's a lot of that going on at various grammar schools. They're growing their own gardens, so they're learning from that. There's also a lot of farm work where they go out and they bring kids in to the farm to do various activities and have their little plant areas and such. So it's basically learning and community activities.
Okay. Now, so okay, John.
So Jane, you mentioned the weekly classes. In addition to those, you also had to put in a certain number of hours in other things.
Right. You had to have at least a minimum of 60 hours of a variety of volunteer work to graduate, in addition to the homework and the exams and everything. And the 60 hours, they basically broke it down into so many hours of continuing ed classes, so many hours of active gardening, so many hours of volunteer outreach programs and that type of thing. So most of us did do a lot more than the 60 hours, especially in the summer months. We just got out there and went anywhere and everywhere we could to get some gardening time. And
what were some of the things you did?
I went to Medway Community Farm. I worked there a lot, and that was probably 2 hours a week. I also went to a number of historical sites and worked their gardens. I did, they have a lot of veterans gardens that they're working on. So you can go there and work for a few hours and get your time there.
You were in Ashland?
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Ashland Historical Society, they're a great group of people over there. So we work in their gardens in the back.
The Marshfield Fair?
Yeah, the Marshfield Fair, that was interesting. They do Ask a Master Gardener booths at different fairs and outreach booths. We went to the Holliston Historical Society Fair, and we did an Ask a Master Gardener booth there. So it's basically, you can come, and if you have a question about a plant or soil or whatever, you can ask the Master Gardener person for their advice and input. And they can do a lot of them do soil testing for you as well. So that's kind of a nice thing to have.
Had you had an opportunity to go to the flower show in Boston at any time before? I know Mass Hort was deeply involved in that for a long time.
Yeah, no, I used to go to that a lot with my mother, and but I haven't gone to the new site wherever they are. And this year I had signed up to volunteer, but it was canceled because of the coronavirus. So yeah, a lot of things were unfortunately we didn't get to do, but that was one of them. I was looking forward to that. I have fond memories of that from years ago.
And we also visited. They were Visit a Master Gardener.
Oh yeah, you can. A lot of the senior Master Gardeners, they have different levels there, and a lot of them are lifetime, and they allow you to come and visit their gardens, and you get hours for that, so to speak. And it's beautiful because you get to see a lot of different types of gardens, fruit gardens, vegetable gardens, trees and shrubs in different landscapes, and it's just. Some of them are gorgeous. As John knows, I take pictures wherever I go, and I come home and I download the 50 pictures that I took of this one garden. But they're all different city gardens, out in the country gardens. So you get a good perspective.
Now, could you describe a little bit about, I'm not sure if the Master Gardener program is flowers or vegetables or both. And could you also describe some of the activities that you did during the classes?
Yeah, it's for everything. As I said, you can work on farms, you can work on, they have a huge, at the Elm Bank, project garden that basically all of the produce that they get from it goes to food banks. So there's a lot of that at various farms and locations too. They're big on supplying food where and when it's needed. So that's nice too. For trees and shrubs, you can go to a lot of the historical places and work there, and you can learn how to properly prune trees and shrubs, which is always a challenge. But mostly I was interested in the flowers, plants, the perennials and the annuals. And if and when Elm Bank is open again, I encourage people, especially with children, to go to the Elm Bank because they have a children's garden there, which is wonderful. They have a gazebo, they have this tower that's made out of wood, and it's just a lovely place to go and sit and stroll around through the garden.
And how many bulbs did you plant there?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, one of the gardens that they have at the Elm Bank is called the Italianate Garden, and it's gorgeous. It's one of those with the huge fountain in the center and the rows, and it goes up to the old mansion. And one weekend we planted about 1,200 bulbs there. And that was actually one of my last projects that I did in last fall. And yeah, it was fun. We were out there. It was a little cold, a little windy, but we were all out there. We were troopers. So I haven't been back to see what it looks like, unfortunately, but hopefully I can get to see it before it changes.
And
Do they still have, oh, sorry, John.
I was just going to say, Master Gardener in Massachusetts is from Mass Horticultural, but it's a nationwide program with various.
Yeah, I didn't know when I first started, but it originally started in Seattle, Washington, and then it, made its way across the continent. And there are branches of it everywhere. In fact, most of the people that we had as instructors in the course were from universities all over New England and New York, and down to New Jersey and such. So, and they were all part of Master Gardener people in conjunction with their universities too. So they were experts. We had a symposium last fall, which I'm not sure if we're going to be able to have it again this fall, but hopefully we will. But they had 4 presenters come, and one of them was from England, one of them was from the Netherlands, one of them was from Canada, and another one was local. So they had really amazing speakers come to the symposium and talk about their projects and what they've been involved in. And we all left with little sample bags of bulbs and things. So that was fun.
I was going to ask earlier, they used to have, you mentioned the gardens at Elm Bank. They used to have weddings at Elm Bank that people would come and have their pictures taken in there. They still do that?
Yep, they still do that. I don't know what they're doing right now, but yeah, in fact, last year I was working at a children's day session on the weekend, and we had wedding parties going through, having their pictures taken as we were sitting there. And yeah, they do a lot of weddings there. It's a beautiful, the grounds are beautiful for it.
All right. Well, getting back to the program, I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about what the requirements are for the Master Gardeners program?
Yep, you have to, as I said, a minimum of 60 hours of volunteer work, and that included gardening, outreach, administrative type work, and that means attending meetings, continuing ed learnings. Right now we're not able to go to a classroom setting as a continuing ed, but we're doing a lot of continuing eds via Zoom, which is fun. And I sat in on a couple that were being done from England the other day, which was kind of fun. And also they have at the Mass Fort, we volunteered for their helpline. So if you want to call up and ask a question of a master gardener, you can call the helpline, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. But it's usually manned by at least 2 people, so that's nice.
And how is England in comparison to us? Are they roughly equivalent as far as season goes?
Yeah, they are. And the places, of course, I'm driving John crazy because I'm like, okay, when we go to England, we're going to go to these gardens, okay? And some of them are beautiful. And there's a beautiful garden in the Netherlands, too, which is some place I would love to go. It's close to Amsterdam, so there's a plus there.
Mm-hmm.
To go.
What did you find particularly challenging going through this program?
The homework. I really did. I mean, that's John. I mean, I would go up and disappear into the room, one of the rooms upstairs for hours, and he'd knock on the door quietly and say, "Are you coming down for dinner?" Like, oh yeah. But yeah, the homework I found challenging, and then I finally got the hang of it, and it became a little easier. It was comprehensive, say that, but you learn a lot.
So that's you learn a lot. What was your most favorite thing to learn?
It's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, though. But I really liked knowing more about soil we had our soil tested here, and we had a woman from the University of Connecticut come and talk to us about soil testing. So when it was time for us to have our soil tested, we took it down to her, and it was great. So we found out we had really bad soil.
Doesn't everybody?
Oh yeah. And that's the first thing I tell people: get your soil tested if you have any questions. But and just landscaping. We had people come in and talk about landscaping and the importance of knowing your terrain and knowing the plants that work best in the different environments. Wet soil, dry soil, sun, shade, and all of that. I was interested in those types of things. So a lot of the people that in the class were landscape people. They were working or starting in their landscape design companies. So that's why they were taking the classes too, to learn more about that. And I think a lot of people took the classes to leave and start their own business. So I think there's a lot of that going around. And it was fun because the people in the class, the students, were from all over: North Shore, South Shore, the Cape, Western Mass. It was quite a mix of localities, so that was kind of nice too.
Was there anything about the class that you would, if someone was asking you if they should take the class or not, is there anything you would say, if you don't like doing this, then don't take the class? Now, I know you were intimidated a little bit by the homework that they gave initially, but you got over that.
Yeah. I think if you don't, certainly if you don't like getting dirty, I would say maybe it's not for you, because you're out there in the environment regardless of what it's like, and you're working. And I'm a mosquito magnet and a bug magnet, so that was another thing. I was totally slathered all the time. But no, other than that, I can't think of anything. I mean, you have to go into it with realistic attitude. And the homework, yes, was intimidating, but you get over it. And they're very supportive. The whole training team was extremely supportive. They would help you. They were there if you had any questions. If you weren't doing so well, they would see if they could help you out to move forward. So you had that support there, which is great.
I had to laugh a little bit because one of the side effects of Jane taking the class, and according to her, it happened, the same thing was she heard from all the other participants. The participants' gardens got no attention at all last year because they were all in class the whole time. So their gardens were completely ignored.
Well, if there's one advantage, I guess, or positive thing we could take out of this isolation time, all of the Master Gardener people are busy in their own gardens, and they're bringing life back to their own gardens. And yeah, pretty much you don't have time. And when you come home from working at a farm garden or something after a few hours, the last thing you want to do is go out in your own garden and do anything. So But yeah, everybody's having fun being out in their own gardens this year.
Could you give us an overview of some of the topics of the things that you learn? I'm not sure. Do you cover design of gardens, or you talked a little bit about soil? Like, what are some of the items that you learn?
Yeah, we did a lot of, it was scientific based, so plant pathology, botany. And I remember after the botany class, the women that I was sitting with, we all just looked at each other and said, oh my God. But the teacher was great. She said, you've had one day of botany. You are not botanists. We were like, okay, thanks. We needed that. But talked a lot about turf and lawns and landscaping, the soil part, entomology. We talked about plant diseases, pests, bugs. The guy who was the pests and bug guy was interesting. He brought in a lot of dead bugs. He was like, come on up and look at them. And we're like, no, it's okay. We'll see it from here. But and house plants, believe it or not. There was a topic. In fact, the gentleman who taught the house plants class was the original president of the Master Gardeners in Massachusetts, and he lives around the corner from us. He recently moved from out in the western part of Mass. So we touched upon all of those topics, tree pruning, shrubs, shade gardens, big on the vegetables and such. So pretty much touch on anything that the communities might be interested in and the schools might be interested for the kids.
You talked about, that thing just turned on. You talked about getting your soil tested and finding out that you didn't have the greatest soil, which nobody does. Could you tell me a little bit, the only thing I know about soil is acidic or not. Yeah. Are there any other dimensions, or is it usually just that?
Yeah, it's just the pH levels. You make sure you have the appropriate pH level for your soil. And it's a real simple, you can buy a test at Lowe's or Home Depot or something, any place like that, and just put a little bit of your soil in. And it can be, your soil test results can be different for different areas in your yard too. Ours was pretty much a mess all over, so we had that to deal with. But your pH levels, and is your soil. When was the last time your soil was treated with nutrients? Drainage is an important thing too for your gardens. So that's all part of it. Soil is a big part. It's a starting place.
All right, Bob, we got 1 minute, so give a short one.
Well, I wanted to know about invasive plants in Massachusetts. There's some plants that have been growing here for years, but they take over and they came from somewhere else. Did they cover any of that in the class?
30 seconds, Jane. Go.
Yes, they did.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any help? Is there any hope for us? Because everywhere I look, it's invasive plants.
The horticulturists are very active in making you aware of native plants, the importance of native plants, and the invasive plants. And there's a lot. There's a lot online. If you want to Google anything, use look for sites that end in .edu or .org. Those are the educational ones, and that help a lot.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And John, last question for you. Do you need to refer to her as Master Gardener when you're out in the yard now?
Yes, and I usually have to bow.
No way. No way.
All right. Hey, thank you both for taking the time and sharing it. That's a really interesting program.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. And thank you for watching this hour of the Hangout Hour. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody. And